We have a really special guest with us, and it's special in a lot of ways, but Josh Reinstein is been the director of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus since its inception on January 5th, 2004. He also owns and operates JSR International Marketing, an international marketing and public relations firm based in Israel. Would you please welcome with me Josh Reinstein? Josh, good to have you with us.
Great to be on the show.
Okay, let me begin by telling you my Israel story just real quick. I received the Lord, and I didn't know anything about Israel. I didn't know what a Jew was. I just had never heard about Israel or Jews or anything like that. And I was walking through a Christian bookstore one day, and I saw a poster that said Israel and had a menorah on it. It was like I'd seen the most beautiful woman in the world. I mean, I just fell in love. I didn't know any theology about Israel. I didn't know anything about the Jewish people. But from that moment forward, I thought, who are these people? I mean, why do I love them so much? The nation of Israel is a special nation, and you have a special place, Josh, you really do. I mean, the work that you're doing in Israel is so phenomenal. Now, first of all, just tell us what the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus is.
Well, the Knesset is literally the Parliament of Israel, and the Christian Allies Caucus of the Parliament of Israel is made up of members of Parliament who build direct relationships and lines of communication and cooperation with Christian leaders around the world. Whether it be church leaders, leaders of organizations, or political leaders, we realized that this was the time when Jews and Christians needed to come together. Yeah. And ironically, we got our start during the time of the Intifada, when we saw that one by one the nations of the world were turning against Israel, and Christians were standing up with Israel. And we asked ourselves, why are Christians standing with Israel when no one else will? And we realized that if you have an economic agenda, you're not necessarily going to stand with Israel. We have no oil.
Right.
And if you have a political agenda, again, not necessarily a good idea to stand with Israel. We have one vote in the UN compared to 22 Arab votes, many more Muslim votes. It's only people who put values and beliefs ahead of economic and political concerns that will stand with Israel. And that leaves the people of the book, both Jews and Christians who believe in the Bible. And we realized that we knew we had a duty to the citizens of Israel to build this new relationship. And it's just been an amazing experience since.
Well, you're very kind toward Christians. Is there a challenge? I mean, do you find anti-Semitism at all in the church today? Do you find any pushing back from segments of Christians, or is it pretty open-handed related to Israel?
Well, we work with all denominations and all types of Christians, and of course we see most of our support coming from evangelical, Bible-believing Christians. Right. Our biggest challenge is probably replacement theology.
Yes, absolutely.
We see a lot of replacement theology in the church where they believe that the covenant between God and Abraham is no longer viable, and that it no longer exists. And Israel is a thorn in their side because obviously God is fulfilling that covenant every day in Israel today. So the fact that Israel even exists is sometimes problematic, and we see churches divesting from Israel instead of investing in Israel and supporting Israel. So that would be our main challenge.
Josh, what do you want Christians to do? Like if there's a believer watching right now and they're saying, I really want to do something for Israel, or a church, what can they do specifically?
Well, there's lots that Christians can do for Israel. I think the most important thing that Christians can do for Israel is pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yes.
That God asked you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and he's never asked you to do any prayer in the Bible other than for the peace of Jerusalem. Yeah. And I believe he does that because he wants you to keep Jerusalem close to your heart. He wants you to talk to your children about Jerusalem, and he wants you to defend Jerusalem. And I think it's important also to come to Israel, to visit Israel, stand with the people and be there. We have sister caucuses in governments all over the world, including the United States. We have the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus. So we're working on legislation through our sister caucuses to mobilize support for Israel and to keep Jerusalem united. We have a website called RecognizeJerusalem.com.
RecognizeJerusalem.com.
And on that site you can put in your area, your zip code, and it'll tell you which congressman you have in your area, who's your representative, and you can say, we want you to support Jerusalem. We want you to support legislation to move the embassy to Jerusalem.
I really want to encourage everyone watching to keep this issue on your hearts because, our national policy toward Israel is changing. And it's really an ominous thing because we have been Israel's friend for so many years. And I know that as Christians, we still feel as Israel's friend very, very strongly. But as a nation, we're making some changes in our foreign policy that we really do need to pray that our nation keeps its alignment in support of Israel. But all of us say to our politicians, our elected representatives, Israel's important to us, and we want you to stand with Israel. You need to say that in any way you can, communicate that to your elected representatives. And I want to say something for just a minute about replacement theology. Replacement theology, you know, when Israel basically was wiped off the map in AD 70, the Jews were scattered and Israel ceased to exist. Many Christian theologians said, okay, well, Israel's gone, and now we are Israel. All of the promises and everything that's true for Israel, that's now us, the church. That's now us as believers, and the Jews don't matter anymore. That's what replacement theology is. The only problem is they got their nation back in 1948, and something that hasn't gone unnoticed, but a lot of people haven't changed their theology. John Hagee, and I know you know Pastor Hagee, who is a champion for Israel, his father was a preacher back in the 20s and 30s, and his father used to tell his congregation, the end can't come until Israel exists again as a nation. And back in the early 1900s, early 20th century, that was just bizarre.
Well, we're seeing Jews and Christians coming together around the world in an unprecedented burst of activity. The fact that God is fulfilling all the prophecies in Israel today is an amazing occurrence, and it's happening in our lifetime.
It's amazing.
And the fact that we get to witness the ingathering of the Jewish people from the north and the south and the east and the west coming back on the wings of eagles, or airplanes as we call them today, or that we get to see the deserts literally bloom. I mean, we grow our vegetables and produce and flowers. We're the #1 exporter of produce in the Middle East, and we grow it in the desert. We saw the dry bones of Ezekiel from the Holocaust grow flesh and become a nation in one day. So to actually be able to witness these things in Israel is proof of the existence of God and proof that the Bible is true. So, I mean, Israel is something that is bringing Jews and Christians together all over the world, and it's just an amazing time to be alive.
The Bible is the only book that predicts the future with accuracy. It's a historical book. And you can look back on prophecies that have been fulfilled that were written thousands of years ago. There's no way that the prophets could have known.
And not only that, but even in the books of the prophets, God says the only reason he's telling you about these prophecies, the only reason he's letting you know what's going to happen so many years in the future is because when it happens, he wants us to know that he did it.
It proves the integrity of the Bible. It proves the existence of God. But it also proves that Israel's still special by covenant. You know, God made an everlasting covenant with Abraham, Josh, and it's still true today.
Well, God keeps his covenants, and we see that being fulfilled in Israel. And what I wanted to talk about today is to let you know that the battle for Jerusalem has begun. And Jews and Christians, people of faith, need to come together and support United Jerusalem. And we opened up a center called the Shalom Yerushalayim Center, the Peace of Jerusalem Center. And you can go on our website at IIACF and see what we're doing. But we're bringing Christians from all over the world together to teach them that the issue of Jerusalem is not a political issue. It's a biblical issue.
You bet.
And we hope that people will come on. We have a campaign now to raise support and awareness. If people can come and support the Shalom Yerushalayim Center, that'd be great. If people will come to Israel, they can visit it free of charge, go through our curriculum.
Where is it located?
It's located in the heart of Jerusalem. We're actually next door to the Garden Tomb.
Oh, wow.
We have a building there, and we bring groups, leadership, and that is really where the strategy for the campaign for United Jerusalem is being held right now today. So it's quite amazing.
So there's a movement right now to divide Jerusalem.
Yeah, I mean, the world leaders are racing to divide Jerusalem and talking about it all over the world. And people of faith are coming together as well. Politicians, Christian leaders, grassroots Christians are coming together to defend Jerusalem. And we'd like to call on the viewers of Daystar who we know, love Jerusalem and love Israel to get involved in that and to get involved in that campaign and to support us.
Well, you guys are in trying to stand for Jerusalem. You don't necessarily have an enemy. You just have a cause, don't you? I mean, you're not anti-Arab, you're not anti-Palestinian in that sense. You're just trying to protect the integrity of your land.
It's very simple. God talks about the time when he's going to restore Jerusalem, and that's the time we're living in.
Yes.
And if Jerusalem's divided and taken away from us, if we lose control of Jerusalem, that flies in the face of prophecy. And as people who believe in the Bible, we know we have the duty to stand and defend Jerusalem.
Well, you guys are doing a great job. And again, is there anything else you want to say to people who are watching, Josh, of how they can support you or anything like that?
Well, I'd just like to thank the viewers for their unwavering support. I'd like to thank Marcus and Joni Lamb, who are some of our greatest supporters around the world. The fact that we have a station like Daystar that is broadcasted in 500 million homes is just such an asset to get the truth out, because in the media you can't really understand what's happening. And Israel is a beautiful place, a safe place, and I invite all the viewers to come and join us. Come to Jerusalem, come to Israel. Our tourism ministry has a great slogan: if you like the book, you'll love the country. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you're there in Jerusalem. So please come on our website and support us. Come to Israel and join us. And just thank you, Daystar, for all the unwavering support we've received over the last years.
Josh, God bless you, buddy.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. You bet.